Hello and welcome back to a View from the Continent series on Salmon's Pizzeria. It's the second time we are running this series. Of course, we had the Copenhagen podcast on for the Kilmarnock game, and now we've got Malmo 1910 or Radio 1910, the Malmo podcast. And I'm delighted to say we've got Jon Nordström from the Malmo podcast. John, how is everything going?
Very good, thank you. I'm delighted to be with you today, Stuart.
Amazing. Thank you so much for giving up your time as well. And we'll jump straight into it because these are sort of bite-sized episodes, so they won't be too long. And we'll get straight into it. Obviously, this is being recorded on Wednesday the 25th, so tomorrow, 5:45 our time, I imagine 6:45 Swedish time. Malmo take on Rangers in the Europa League. Not the first time these two teams have met. Malmo seem to have Rangers' number a little bit as well, which has been a bone of contention, I think, for some Rangers fans. But we'll run it back a little bit further than that. Malmo currently top of the Swedish league, John. Of course, they're the champions from the year before. But the year before that was sort of seventh and not the best year, of course. What sort of changed at Malmo to allow this sort of transition from, seventh place basically to champions and more than likely back-to-back champions?
Well, we are by far the wealthiest team in Sweden through all of our Champions League prize money, essentially. And we also tend to sell our players quite dearly to the European giants. So I would say that for sure helps. I mean, the correlation between wealth and results these days is almost like 100%, right? So I'd say the reason why we found ourselves in such a dire spot back in 2022 was that we changed our head of sports, and he essentially he made, I believe, 7 or 8 transfers, and they all failed miserably. And to this day, we didn't get money for either one of them. None of them succeeded in terms of sporting success either. And the ones that we haven't paid off by now to get them off our squad are still out on loan. So that was really the big reason why we just plummeted in 2022. And then we just got the old sporting director back, just threw more money on it. And then here we are back on top.
Amazing. I mean, it's quite funny, actually, because it's almost a direct correlation to how Rangers have operated in recent seasons. They put a lot of money into the squad last season with Michael Beale coming in, and it's very similar in that a lot of those transfers failed. They were big transfers and they didn't live up to expectation. I think Rangers have spent a lot of time, effort and money moving those players on, whether it's contract terminations or selling them at a loss. So Rangers have had a much smaller budget, I think, to deal with this season. And they haven't maybe got the success that Malmo have bounced back to. Looking at the Malmo squad as it is now, and obviously it's built on a lot of success. There's a lot of experience in there. I think maybe one that Rangers fans might notice is Erik Botheim, who was linked with Rangers for a little bit a few years back. How big has Erik Botheim been since his move to Malmo?
Well, his start was amazing. He scored, I think he had 11 goals to his name after the first 10 games. He was first in the in the Golden Boot competition for a while, and our second striker was second, and our third striker, midfielder striker, he was just sold to Strasbourg in Ligue 1 in France. They were 1, 2, and 3 for a bit, but after that magnificent start, he really failed. He failed to score for the longest time, and he didn't score up till this Sunday, actually. So I think he was without a goal for 15 games or so. So I was talking to another podcast this morning, saying that I'm actually not even sure that he'll be starting tomorrow. Our coach today, Rydström, he actually hinted that he would prefer to have legs in the game against you to disrupt your build-up play. And that sort of hints and alludes to another Norwegian called Berg. So he might be the one starting ahead of Erik Botheim, actually.
Wow. So we see the name. He was expecting huge things, wasn't he? And obviously after that start as well, it's quite surprising. In terms of Malmo's style then, and in European football as well, what can Rangers fans sort of expect from this Malmo team going into the game?
So traditionally, Scandinavian teams play, especially in Europe, they play very compact and structured, and they try to hit you on the break, and they're quite reactive, right? They're sort of reacting to your mistakes. Whereas this coach, since a year and a half back, Rydström once again, he was on his way to Brighton this summer, actually. He was the second choice to replace De Serbi, as he left for Marseille, I believe. He plays the possession-style football. So you can expect not a Spanish-like team, but definitely a team that will try to beat you by actually being good at playing football, as opposed to just being reactive. So it's been likened to something that's been labeled relationism, as made popular recently by Fluminense, this Brazilian team, where you basically try to crowd a certain place of the pitch, a spot of the pitch, and lure the defenders out, and then try to exploit that area that they've just left. So if you look at the goals scored by Malmö this season, 5-10 seconds ahead of the goal, you can't see a goal coming. But then all of a sudden, like, the defender comes out, that's where the ball goes, and bam, 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 goal. So when we do score, which is quite often, at least in Sweden, it's quite nice footballing goals, if you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think anyone will argue with most football goals. It's what we all want to see, really, isn't it? Look at it, sort of previous European ties in for Malmo. It's, most years it's trying to go through the qualifiers. Of course, was it last year? No, the year before you had the sort of bad spell when you lost all the group games. But there was a very tough group, and a lot of those games were pretty close. A couple of years before that, of course, you did meet Rangers 2-1 home and away. Of course, the away leg being the big one when Malmo were reduced to 10 men and came back with Antonio Cholak scoring the goals. Yes. Of course, moved on to Rangers for a little bit as well. So in terms of what you're expecting from Rangers, are you sort of imagining a similar style to a few years back, or have you done much research on Rangers in terms of what they might offer in this game?
Yeah, I've done some, and it would appear as if you're trying to press high up the pitch quite intensely. You seem to have a formation that is similar to ours, like 4-2-3-1, pretty much. And so I think that's basically how we will both be approaching this game. But I think one thing that we've added lately, again, after a very bright start to the season, a bit of a slump during the summer, is that we've been able to vary our defense quite a bit. Like, now we can sit back and we can press high. For a bit, we could only press high, and we weren't even able to do it very well. So I was quite happy to see us beat like title contenders Häcken on Sunday, playing with like defensively very well and flexibly. So. How would you describe like your approach to the game?
Well, I think with Rangers, it's very hard to nail down a style at the moment with Rangers. There's been a lot of changes. I mentioned Philippe Clement, the manager, came in, had a very, very good start, won the Scottish League Cup at Rangers last season, and they were sort of neck and neck with Celtic for the title for a very long time. Yeah. There was a big sliding doors moment where they drew 3-3 at Ibrox, where Rangers were sort of on the front foot and they couldn't quite get that one over the line, and then it all just sort of went downhill for them for there. In terms of how they played this season, again, it was a rocky start. Going out of Europe to Dynamo Kiev, there was a draw in the league with Heart of Midlothian, and then getting beat quite comfortably by Celtic. Yeah. But they have had a bit of resurgence in the last few weeks, and there is a bit more of a style to the game. Some of the newer signings are starting to, show what they can offer and the potential. I mean, a big one for Rangers has been the Brazilian left back Yefdi. Unfortunately, he is actually suspended for the game because he was sent off against Dynamo Kiev. So I think that's a big advantage for Malmo because he offers Rangers a lot of legs up the pitch, which they don't have too much of, especially down the right hand side. Captain James Tavernier. Yeah, as good as he has been over the years for Rangers, his legs are going and he can be got at down the wing. So I think
I remember him.
Yeah, it was, of course he would have played in that game. Yeah, and he's one of I think he's almost he's either already is or he's very close to being in the top 5 Rangers European goal scorers of all time, and he's a right back.
Yeah, I think he had like 17 points to his name last season, if not 17 goals.
Yeah, overall, and the season that Rangers reached the Europa League final, he was the top goal scorer in the competition. Wow. He does take penalties, but he does also get goals from a lot. He plays so high up the pitch, but there is noticeable differences in him now that he is getting older, and that is slowing down a little bit. They've also signed Barami, the Albanian number 10, but they're sort of playing him out wide at the moment to try and fit other players in. So it's going to be very interesting.
Do you think that Bayrami will get a start?
I think Barami will start. He started the last league game out on the left-hand side. For Tom Lawrence, sort of plays the number 10 role for Rangers. It's all going to be how Clermont, I think, sees Malmo playing, because you're going to need creativity up top. Barami's already proven in the very short spell he's had. He's already proven that he can pick the pass that Rangers have lacked a lot of creating chances. He can give you that. And then you've got Cyril Dessers up top, who is a love-hate figure at Rangers, because he can miss an open goal and then he can score out of nothing. So he's a very frustrating figure. But I think in terms of what Rangers do, I think Clermont might, and just my guess, I think in terms of replacing Hefty at left back, I think they will probably go with Jon Nordström, who's a bit of a utility player. He plays sort of all over the pitch for Rangers. He might even line up in the centre of midfield, but he gives Rangers legs, and that's what they've severely lacked, certainly in the last season. In terms of Malmo's danger, then where can Rangers fans expect that to come from?
Where they can exploit weaknesses in the Malmo team.
Sorry. We will come to that. That's a great point. But in terms of what are Malmo's strengths player wise, who's going to be the ones to hurt Rangers?
Yeah, I would say our midfielding trio: Lasseberg Jonsson, Norwegian, sitting midfielder; Sergio Peña from Peru, as a deep lying playmaker, and then Anders Christiansen, abbreviation AC, as essentially a 10, just on top of them. If they're having a good day, then they can dictate the tempo of the game quite well, at least on a domestic level. Having said that, we actually beat PAOK, Greek champions, quite comfortably in both games. Well, I mean, we beat them in overtime away, but our XG was 5 and theirs was 1, so it was it looked better for them than it was, I'd say.
Yeah,
quite subjectively. But no, I would say those players, and then our defensive four is really, really good. Could be the best defensive four that I've experienced as a 42-year-old.
Wow.
And our goalkeeper the same, actually. So I think your best chance of getting away with 3 points is disturbing our build-up play and try to get Peña to not get the ball, essentially trying to move it forward. Because exploiting our wing backs or left back and right back, they're really, really good. And in the middle, you have Pontus Jansson from Brentford, who was really good actually in Brentford. So of course, domestically, he excels. And then next to him is one of the hottest prospects in the world, as it seems, a 19-year-old left-footed defender called Nils Zetterström. So I think defensively, as players and their potential and output, they're all really good. But if you manage to disturb our build-up, then yes, that's where you win the game.
Amazing. Pontus Jansson, I think a lot of fans will recognise that from English football, certainly from Brentford. But just bringing it to a close then, John, how do you see the game going then? What's your sort of prediction for the game tomorrow?
So according to the betting companies, it would appear as if Malmö FF are favorites for this game. Mm-hmm. Historically, we do punch above our weight in Europe. We shouldn't really be able to compete with teams twice, 3, 4 times our squad value. But for whatever reason, I don't know what it is, we tend to do that anyways, right? This is, I think, if we are to proceed to the second round of the Europa League come spring, this is one of the games that we need to win, at least get a draw from. So for sure, the coach will be trying to win this game. He's not going to sit back. And that's also not something we're very well put together for. We're not good at suffering, so to speak. So we're gonna go and we're gonna try to win possession of the game and play it on your pitch on your side of the pitch as much as possible. And I think we could, it's gonna take a 5 out of 5 kind of game from us. We can't get away with a half-ass performance. But if the stars align, then yes, we can win. But I think if I was to bet on the game, I would say 1-1.
Oh, very interesting. Just last question for me, and apologies, I did want to put this in a little bit earlier. The Swedish league is obviously a summer league. It runs outside of the other Europe, very similar to some other Scandinavian countries as well. How does that impact you guys, or how do you see that impacting you guys when it comes to sort of, because the Europa League phase now runs past Christmas, it runs into January, and obviously your league is going to be wrapping up by then. How would that impact you guys in the off season if you are still in the competition?
I mean, it really messes up our preseason, right? But we do have experience in doing so, thankfully, because we won the Europa League group stage last time around, and we got to play Chelsea, which is, of course, game over as you draw them for us. And then the year before that, we qualified for the second round as well by ending second in the group stage, I think. And then we got Wolfsburg out of the German Bundesliga. And both of those games were, of course, around mid-February. So at least there is experience in doing so before, but it really messes with our coming season.
Yeah, no, I can imagine it was definitely one I wanted to just find. I've always been fascinated by it with the summer league. There's been talk in the past of Scotland moving to a summer league because of postponements in December with the weather and things like this. So it's always very fascinating to see sort of how teams do cope with the European side of things. And because I imagine
I will tell you what, Stuart, sorry to interrupt, but it's hugely advantageous for Champions League qualifiers.
Exactly what I was about to say. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean the Greek team we played, they weren't up to it at all. You could see them being shocked at the level we were at when we played them, especially for the first game before they had one more week of practice. Yeah. And I think also especially Greek teams, they're not known for the craziest preseason camps. It's not exactly Italians going up to the mountains and pumping themselves IPO. So it can be hugely advantageous as well.
Yeah, no, something that I think would definitely suit Scottish teams, to be honest. When all the money is in sort of reaching that group stage, that's the that is the holy grail for the teams.
For sure, yeah.
To reach them, especially as I think this year or maybe next year, Scotland are sort of losing that automatic Champions League spot.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, they'll have to start qualifying again unless the coefficient can come back up. So, really, really interesting stuff. Jon, thank you so much for sparing some time today and coming on to discuss Malmo. All the best for the game. Obviously, as a Scottish football podcast, we don't hope you get anything out of it, but all the best. It's been an absolute pleasure speaking to you.
Thank you, Stuart. So much fun. And best of luck and safe travels to everyone who's coming to Malmö for the game.
Thank you very much.